This is the Darshan Talks podcast, regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to Darshan Talks. I'm your host, Darshan Kulkarni. It's my mission to help patients trust the products they depend on. I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, and I help companies with FDA-regulated products. So if you have an interest in an FDA-regulated product or in the companies that make them, this is the podcast for you. So today's podcast is about clinical research. It's about the story of a site. It's about the story of a site that's growing tremendously. So if you are a sponsor looking at clinical trial sites, if you are a CRO looking at clinical trial sites, if you are another site going, you know what, I want to do this better, I want to do this differently, maybe this is the conversation you want to have. If you are a site network and going, what are people like us doing? This might be the conversation to learn a little bit more about what a high-performing site looks like, or a high-performing site network looks like. So today's guest is the CEO of Mercury Clinical Research, and he's also the COO of a different home healthcare company as well. And ladies and gentlemen, our guest for today is Zedric Bhuhay. How are you, Zedric?
Pretty good. Thank you, Darshan. That's a lot of to fill, but it's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming on. So Zedric, let's talk a little bit about the story of Mercury. How did you get into clinical research? Why was this an area you wanted to get into?
Well, Darshan, just like many others, kind of just stumbled into it. So what happened was my partner in the home health company that you alluded to earlier had someone that he knew in research and basically wanted to help augment the company. So that's where I came in and wanted to bring in a different perspective and even grow Mercury Clinical Research to have more expertise and have a better reach for therapeutic areas. And so I came into Mercury a few years back, about 5 years ago, and it started out as mainly with internal medicine therapeutic areas is what we were focused on. And now today we're in CNS, we're in neurology, we're in pediatry and pediatrics. And of course, with all that being said, COVID is the hot topic for today. So that's really how it came about, and looking to continue to grow with MCR.
But when you start with MCR, you had this vision of doing diabetes and hypertension. Why did you start there?
Yeah, so I think with diabetes, hypertension, that's a field that there's always a need in. My own family is really, has a lot of family has diabetes. So it's a field that I think that there's a lot of improvement that can be done. Metformin's great, and actually metformin's very, very good. But there's a lot of other modes and modalities that can be still researched for diabetes. And hypertension as well. It's a general area. So we worked with those general areas initially just because it was an easier population to obtain and easier to obtain certain studies. But then what happened was there was opportunity for other specialties, other therapeutic areas that we felt would be in more need for working with other physicians, other clinics to work in research on.
So you talk about other opportunities. So does that mean that you had these opportunities pop up and you said, you know what, I can't keep turning them away? Or did you take the first one and say, I'm going to figure this out? Or was it more? Was that the second one?
So it's like the chicken and the egg, right?
Right, exactly.
Chicken and the egg. So the approach that we took, or that I wanted to take, was, what are the interest levels that I have? What I wanted to do is kind of run the company with a vision that I personally have passion for. And when I was thinking about that, pediatrics, neurology, those are Alzheimer's specifically, it kind of hits close to home. So I ended up wanting to focus on those first and look for the right team, the right sites that can work with that. And then it just so happened that those ended up being some of the therapeutic areas that were also pretty, I guess if you want to call it, hot in research. And as well with the orthopedics as well. I guess this was back maybe 5 years ago. So those were the areas that we wanted to work with, and that's how I guess that's the approach that we took to get those specific therapeutic areas.
So as you were getting into these areas, first of all, let's start with a really basic question: why Mercury Clinical Research? Like, is that the name? Because if I'm starting off a company, I'm thinking of what are the basic questions I'm trying to answer. And the question I start with is, what am I going to name my company? Mercury.
Yeah, so we actually, like I mentioned earlier, so we actually took over Mercury about 5 years ago. So that was a company that was initiated, that was a enterprise back before we came on board.
So that was just the name you inherited at that point,
right?
And you said that there's tremendous intellectual property behind it. There's a good name behind it. There's goodwill behind it, and therefore I'm going to stick down this area. So,
right.
So if that's the direction you decided, were you a site then, or were you always a site network at that point?
So we were initially, when I came on board to help augment the company, it was more of a site. It was a site network, but it was a network of two, and sometimes one. So it wasn't necessarily a network that it is today. It operated more as a site. So
it operated as a site. How did you decide? The vision is we can do bigger, we can do better. We're going to go towards a site network. So when did that make sense? How did you get there?
Yeah. So first, what we had to do was work on the process. The reason why I got on board was actually because there were some processes that needed to be improved. So when that happened, really thought to myself and said, we can really grow more sites now that we're getting these two sites cleaned up in a way that it should be. So and tightened up the processes, the efficiencies. Really at the end of the day, our first priority is patient safety, and then of course is quality data. So I preach that every day for all of our sites. And once we got that process in place, that's when we figured out, okay, well, you know what? If this works here, this will work pretty much anywhere. Right. So slowly just trying to emulate that to all of our other sites, building sites and building teams for the different site networks that we have.
So how did you start finding the sites that are going to be part of your network?
So as far as the best way, or I guess what worked the best for us, because initially it was whoever we can talk to and whoever has the biggest population, that's kind of what everybody tries to do. But then after really going back to the drawing board, we decided, I guess we all agreed that it would make sense to take our time, really vet the investigators that we want to have on our team, really vet the population that we're really looking for, and really don't rush it. That's if there's anything that I guess the main takeaway as far as picking the right site, it's do not rush. Just make sure that the investigator is really on board and really wanted to work in research. Make sure that there's a population that's actually there, and willing to participate in clinical research. And then once you get those ironed out, that's when you can really take the next steps. And I wouldn't take the next step until you really make sure that that's it is what it is.
So you talk about this idea that take your time, vet these sites, which sounds great. So does that mean you bring them on initially on a temporary basis and then go, we'll make you permanent? Or is it more, we've pre-vetted them and the vetting's excellent, so we think we can bring you on directly? Yeah,
no, that's a good question. And it kind of depends on who we're talking to. Some of them we actually start as sub-investigators. So some we start as sub-investigators and just working maybe bringing referrals, and then of course just working as some investigator. And some, just like how you were saying, we won't even get started. It's really just a slow process of let's see how they react whenever we have a couple studies in the pipeline. Let's see what those numbers and what the patient numbers look like, and really just having a good conversation and multiple meetings back and forth. Of course, this is pre-COVID, so you can actually go out to dinner and talk to them and really see exactly if they're willing to participate and do research.
So if I was a physician and I don't know if I want to be part of clinical research, I've heard that it's a good thing. When I was in academia, when I was getting my medical degree, I saw my attendings do this. How do I know if it's right for me? When do I know that I should be talking to a Zedric to find out if I should be part of this?
Yeah, so as far as on the physician's end, it's a very busy practice on a day-to-day basis. It's really their personal preference on when they should jump and get their feet wet. But as far as a physician confirming if this is right for them or not, what I would say, talk to other investigators that's in research, and that's what we do actually. So we'll introduce a couple of our PIs into, potential PIs and take them out and introduce them to each other, and even just a phone call. I think this is something that helps out as well.
How do you deal with the constant sort of, I know you try to vet them, see if they're serious, but I think the numbers are something like 97% of all physicians who start clinical trials leave clinical trials within like 3 years. The numbers are pretty daunting. So even if they have the good intentions when they start, those intentions may not last. So how do you address that good intentions sort of eventually give way to reality?
And I think that's where expectations come in play. And that's why, taking your time plays a big role. And part of taking your time includes really explaining and setting expectations, letting them know this is not going to happen, tomorrow. This could be a 6-month thing. It could be a 1-year thing. It doesn't happen where all of a sudden you're going to be high and roller site number 1, in 2 weeks. Setting those expectations very clear is very important. And we definitely over the years have learned explaining and setting those expectations it really makes a big difference because at that point the PI knows, okay, well, we talked about this before. They're not expecting something tomorrow. They're not expecting to be the number 1 high enrolling site in 1 week. And also they know that, okay, well, I actually do have to provide oversight. I actually do have to review these charts and see what's going on. So setting those expectations is what's key.
So do you have some kind of onboarding process you talk them through, or is it like a checklist almost, or is it more a conversation and it's responsive to their specific questions?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. We actually have both the checklist and part of that checklist are the conversations that go back and forth.
Okay.
But in that checklist, that checklist over the years has definitely been an evolving checklist because we thought it was supposed to be one way and we realized, let's add this on there because we didn't think about this. And of course now with COVID, it's a little bit because right now in COVID, any investigator or any physician can pretty much be an investigator right now. So we got to kind of hold our horses on that though.
But that's the problem, right? Any physician can be an investigator, but not all physicians will be an investigator.
Right.
So it's really finding the wheat from the chaff, if you will, finding out who's going to last, and if this is the person you want to spend money, energy, time cultivating. Obviously, if you do and you have a high enough retention rate, that's excellent. It's just unusual. As we said, the numbers are pretty daunting. So if you're, let's say, a physician and you're going, I'm not making enough money. Is clinical research the location you're going to make that money?
Definitely, I wouldn't want to give monetary as the primary incentive to doing clinical research, and we never do that. Really, clinical trials is for the physician that is patient-oriented, that wants to provide options for the patient, especially for patients who are seeking something that they can't believe through whatever's out in the market right now, or patients who, the truth is, can't afford the cost of medications right now. So we want to look for physicians that really are patient-centric first, and then money always comes after that.
Very cool. So now you've landed up in a scenario where you're saying that these physicians are right for you. What kind of training and onboarding do you have for them? What expectations do they need to know that they're going to be responsible for, if you will?
Plenty of phone calls, plenty of text messages, follow-throughs, and we basically give them the layout, like I said, checklist a while ago, of what takes place when a study is pre-awarded, a study is awarded, and then what goes on. Every study is different, as you know. Every protocol is different, but as far as the process, they're pretty much all identical. So we let them know what to expect during the whole clinical trial process. And as a site network, our goal is really to augment their clinic and not to hamper their daily operations. So we provide all the resources from our end to do the research side of things. They keep doing what they got to do as far as their staff. We try not to hinder their staff and their daily operations. What we need from the physician is just the physician's time and their oversight for the study.
So that's an interesting thing. So there are different models, obviously, to being an SMO, be a site network. Your model is the physician does what they do and will provide all the research stuff. What does that research stuff generally look like?
Yeah, so that's from recruiting the patients, enrolling the patients, and performing all the procedures for the patients, follow through, dealing with internal IMBs, and then of course through the end of the study. So it's really from A to Z.
It's A to Z. Mm-hmm. So they're not walking in going, I'm going to need to change anything I do. But now on the other hand, they're still responsible. So correct. Do they fight back in your experience on things like protocol training and site initiation and that kind of stuff? Or do they go, you know what, I'm going to have my CRA really manage this whole process? How does that work? The coordinator,
right.
If you will. But yeah.
And again, that comes with that initial first conversation with the investigator, letting them know, hey, this is how it's going to work. This is what we're going to do. What we need from you is to sit in with this trainings. We need for you to provide oversight. And these are the things that we can help you out. And this is a good partnership. So once that expectation set, it's normally it's pretty smooth sailing.
Okay. And you talk about setting expectations. You've got an unusual background that you also help manage another healthcare company. Are there any lessons you've learned in that company that have been useful in managing this company?
Oh, definitely. Most definitely. So I'm the operations officer at IPR Healthcare. And what we do over there is we provide provider skilled services mainly for the geriatric population, for home health and also for hospice. And really our main key there is compassion. We provide a service of compassion, or we provide a service. We don't sell pens or we don't sell, any materials. We just provide services and for patients that just got out of surgery. We basically try to get them back to independent living. That's for the home health side. For the hospice side, we really provide them with the compassion just to at the end of life, and really not just helping the patient, but really helping the family. So the compassion that we give is really the number one priority that we have there. And as far as lessons that I've learned, it really is just being patient-centric, really caring for the patient. Once you do that, all the decisions that you make, so long as it's patient safety, everything will fall beneath that. And of course, you have to get a good team that has the same mindset.
And how do you find that team? For Mercury.
So, I'm lucky enough that, we have a great team over here. I get to do what we're doing in this growth, what we're doing without the team that we have here. Same thing with IPR. We have a great team at IPR as well. But what it takes is having a good team and then making sure that they know the mission of the company, and then emulating that, and basically trying to clone that to the next person that comes in, and then the next person that comes in. So once you do that, and you're able to know that this is the goal for the company, the mission for the company, that's the main thing, is basically trying to duplicate those the good team, the good folks that we have.
So you're building out a site network. It's getting bigger and bigger. How does something like decentralized studies affect what you do? And what I mean by that is, people are saying, you know what, I want to be able to not have to go to a site, and I want to be able to go to my pharmacist and get my medication and be part of a study. Do you see that succeeding? Do you see, what are the barriers you see for decentralized studies?
Yeah, so I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because that's where IPR actually plays a pretty big role. So during the time in COVID, of course, we're trying to still continue some of our other studies. We have other studies that's not related to COVID. And what they were saying was, the patients were saying, well, I don't want to go to the clinic. I'm afraid of getting COVID. So then, of course, we went back to the sponsor, and they said, well, we'll be able to provide, or we'll allow you guys for your staff to go see the patient. Well, luckily, we have a home healthcare company that we can reach out to. So what we ended up doing was working out some of our providers over there, and having them, come on board over here on the other side, and they were able to work that out for more home care. I mean, they're licensed clinicians; they were more than qualified. Just had to do some of the trainings, et cetera. So it ended up actually working out pretty well, because there were a couple of other vendors that we tried to work with, and it was more of a headache than working with somebody that we literally know right next door. Right.
So if you're in a scenario where do you see decentralized studies really picking up, or is it still more smoke and mirrors right now?
My opinion with the decentralized trials, I think it's, and I don't want to say smoke and mirrors. It just depends on the therapeutic area, and it depends on the type of study.
Okay.
Certain studies it'll work well with, and certain studies I think it just won't.
So can you give me an example?
Yeah. So, for example, I think with Alzheimer's studies, I think that might work well, because some of the patients may not be able to go, to the patient's homes. But at the same time, some of those, a patient may not be able to go to clinics. But at the same time, there are some, rating interviews that may be better off face-to-face. So even just me thinking about this right now, maybe it wouldn't really be the best. But I just think that some therapeutic areas and some studies will work better with just regular process of clinical trials.
So I was talking to another interviewee, if you will, and one of the things he said was that a huge reason clinical trials work the way they do is because patients trust their physicians to decide what's right for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to eliminate the site, you're eliminating the physician. And if you're eliminating the physician, how do you keep your patients involved and sort of on track? Are there scenarios, are there formats, are there disease states where, based on what you're saying, decentralized studies work out better than others, if you will? Like Alzheimer's, right, you pointed out, was probably not the right fit.
Right. No. I'm just thinking about it. I don't think it is. So, I mean, more so, maybe more of the observational type trials might work out better for those. But anything that you need more of a personal and just like you were saying, you really need that trusting relationship with, whether it be the physician or even the coordinators, the research coordinators. I think it's better off that. So I don't want to say it's smoke and mirrors, and I would call it that. Sure. I just think that it will work in certain cases, and certain cases I think, and more often than not, I think it wouldn't work. But that's my opinion.
Fair enough. So, I mean, we can keep going with this, and it's a fascinating conversation. So thank you for coming on. We do have a question, which is, we like you to ask a question to our audience. What is one question you want the audience to answer for you, so that they can answer something you have in mind?
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I have a 3-year-old, and he's been talking about this I guess there's a new Power Ranger show that I have no idea what it's called. So if anybody knows what that is, let me know. It looks like Power Rangers, but they're not, you know. And I'm still trying to figure it out because he keeps wanting me to play it on YouTube. So
that may be my favorite question I've been asked on here. So kudos. Let me ask you a couple of questions, rapid fire questions for you.
Sure.
What's an accomplishment you're most proud of?
Really just bringing up the current accomplishment is bringing up Mercury Clinical Research to the point that it is right now. We talked about this a little bit right before we went live. We were planning on growing last year. And then obviously with COVID, it took a temporary halt, but then for different reasons, we ended up growing even more than anticipated. So I think so far that's pretty good. And I appreciate all the team and everybody else for helping with that.
Very cool. When are you most inspired?
What's that?
When are you most inspired?
When am I most inspired? So I do triathlons, and I think every time I sign up for a triathlon down the road, all of a sudden I see that end goal, and I'm not just trying to accomplish the triathlon, I'm trying to do everything else around it. So whenever I have that end goal, I get that inspiration mode.
That's really cool. What's the best compliment you've ever received? On a good day, I'm 5'4", and one time this person said, "Oh, you're a pretty tall person." So I said, I don't know if he was just joking or. No. That's awesome. That's really cool. I love how relatable your answers are. That's awesome. Who is your hero or heroine and why?
That's a good question. I would have to say my hero is my dad.
Okay.
So we came here. Well, my family came here in the Philippines when I was 6. Kind of the whole story. Didn't really come here with much. He ended up going to the seminary, becoming a deacon in the church, and then just his work ethic really kind of rubbed off into me, and then just wanted to make him proud. So I would say he's my hero.
That's awesome. What's your favorite way to give back to your community?
Every year we always give back to the poor. So that's kind of the annual thing that we do, or actually maybe twice a year biannually, and just do it through the church, or just do it through just giving out food and just clothing to people around the city.
That's awesome. How do you define success?
That's a good question. I didn't know you were going to ask me all these questions, Darshan. I would define success with the team around me. If I see happy faces, not even happy faces, but the team working hard for the mission that I want. So I have a mission, and it's a mission that I stand for. And if I see my team believing in that mission, and also believing in everything that we do, and the principles and the goals for that, that's what I would say. Okay, this is pretty successful.
So, for example, when you're talking about patient safety, that's your goal, and people who follow that. Very cool.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
What challenges you?
Like I said, I have a 3-year-old, so. and he's only number 1. So, and I joke around because before we got married, I told my wife I wanted 7 kids. So we're recalibrating that. Right now, just juggling all this and with the little one, I think is what's been challenging.
So it's not the 2 businesses that took you down. It's not the triathlons. It's 3-year-old.
It's whatever that show is that he wants on YouTube, and I can't figure out the name of it for the life of me. And and he cries and cries and cries. I'm like, God goodness, what is the name of this? It looks like Power Rangers. It's like little Power Rangers. They're like small little Power Rangers.
I'm gonna hopefully someone finds this video.
Yeah.
What's the most fun you've had recently?
So I'm a fan of snowboarding. So we've been snowboarding a few weekends ago. That's my. I'm normally prefer the warm weather, but if I was to go in the snow, I would be snowboarding.
And here's the last question. If you were going to build a Mount Rushmore to 2020, who would be the first person on it?
Oh man, that's a tough one. It would probably be my team.
First person, who on your team would you put on there?
Well, I have to put my partner there first because he's a mentor and partner. So
very cool. Zedric, this was amazing. This was such a great conversation. So thank you for coming on. We'd love to have you back again.
For sure, Darshan. Yeah, thank you.
This was awesome. And Zedric, do want to ask you, let's do a quick recap. During this podcast, we landed up talking about your background. You talked about the two companies you have. We talked about how you started off with diabetes and hypertension studies and then went into everything from neurology, vaccine studies. We talked about your growth from essentially now becoming, this is your second successful business. And there's a growth story associated with Mercury and how you exemplify that. You talked a little bit about staffing and how you sort of build out not just your team, but also build out the sites and build out and reach out to sponsors and market to them. Did I miss anything?
No,
we talked about decentralized studies as well.
Yeah.
So nothing in this podcast should be construed as legal or clinical advice of any kind. It is intended only for educational purposes and entertainment purposes. So for those of you who missed it, Zedric, where can they find you?
They can catch me here at the office. You can just in Mercury Clinical Research. The office number here is 713-777-5343. You can ask for me, and I'll do my best to get back to them. And if whoever has the answer to that question, I'll definitely get back to you.
Perfect. If you like this podcast, please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Please answer Zedric's question because he needs it for this 3-year-old. And you can find me on Twitter at Darshan Talks, or you can go to our website at darshantalks.com. So Zedric, thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you, Darshan. It was a pleasure.
This is the Darshan Talks podcast. Regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at Darshan Talks or the show's website at darshantalks.com.